So hey guys, welcome to the sixth review. As I mentioned last week, I wanted to start looking at some Ultraman figures. We've had a lot of Godzilla and we've had Gamera, but the second most popular Kaiju franchise after Godzilla is of course the Ultra franchise. If you don't know what that is, it's a series of TV shows featuring giant superheroes who fight Kaiju, basically. It encompasses, I believe there's somewhere around 30 different series, Ultra Q, Ultraman, Ultra 7, all that kind of thing, and a whole plethora of films and video games. And despite not being as popular as Godzilla, theoretically there's a lot more of it than Godzilla. But yeah, the figures are also made by Bandai, a lot of the figures anyway, and I just wanted to have a look at the first Ultra figure I ever had. And it's quite appropriate, as it was the first ever Ultra Kaiju. Now this is Gomess from the very first episode of Ultra Q, which was the first of the Ultra series. So I thought it was a good place to start with Ultra figures. So first of all, before I talk about sculpt, you might have noticed that facially, this guy looks a little bit like the Showa era Godzilla. And that is because this Kaiju Gomess was actually made using a recycled Godzilla suit from the Showa era. Now I can't remember exactly which suit it was, actually, but yeah, it was a Showa era suit. So if you just take a look at him quickly, you can sort of see already that he looks quite a lot like Godzilla, but there's a lot of differences. So I'll be just talking about them while I talk about the sculpt. So if we have a look at his face, you can see it's very, very Godzilla-like. He's obviously got these higher brow ridges than Godzilla had. He's got this collection of tusks. He's got two hanging down from his mouth there, which are nicely sculpted. He's got these two that come out at the back of his head here. Not quite as nice sculpting here because of this, but it's still quite nice. And you got this one at the top here, bursting out of the top of his head. Now, the sculpting in the mouth's really good. The teeth again aren't individually sculpted, but which is a shame. But otherwise, yeah, the face is pretty good. Nice detailing inside the mouth there. It's like a tongue sculpted in there. You know, he's got the big, goofy Showa era looking eyes. And yeah, overall the head sculpt's pretty good. You've got these fins here that start to come down into the back. Now I'm going to look at the tag after, as this is the first figure we've looked at with a tag. Now down his back, this sort of detail carries on. Now this was obviously all added to Gomess. It wasn't on the original Godzilla suit, but I believe these are sort of meant to be wings. He never really flies with them from what I remember, but yeah, it's kind of like a mix of a carapace and wings. It's quite interesting looking, but if you look, it's nicely detailed. It's got nice indentations there, and then you get this bit of a shell type of texture here, which is nice. Now carrying down onto the tail, these follow all the way to about here. Got the split tail there. The skin texture is really nice. If you look at the underneath of the tail as well, he's got this different, less armoured looking part of the tail, which is quite nice. Going back up to his arms, he has this standard sort of scale look to him. His hands, which only have 3 fingers, obviously different from Godzilla. And then here you've got his chest with his plating and his like hairy bits here. Now I'm not quite sure what that was meant to be. Again, he's a very strange looking kaiju, but it's kind of, his weirdness is sort of subtle. It's only when you take a deeper look at him you realise he's kind of strange looking. But yeah, he's got these sort of plates here, and this like hairy texture there, which is quite nice. If I can just get that to focus, so it gives the illusion of fur there, which is quite nice. The legs are very similar to the arms, just this sort of scale texture. He's got the bulky knees of a classic Godzilla, and basically from the knees down he's just Showa era Godzilla. So yeah, sculpting's really nice. I've always liked Gomess, so I suppose this sculpt appeals to me, but yeah, I'm a fan of this. Oh, I'll point out here that Gomess this is the Ultra Q version of Gomess. He did make an appearance later on in a different Ultra series, but the suit was slightly different. He had much bigger hands and slight changes to the suit. This is the original Gomess. So I'm basing my sculpt on a comparison to the first of the Gomess suits. Now again, with colour, similar to Gamera actually, it's kind of difficult to pick up the colour, but the majority of this figure is, it might look black on the camera actually, but it's a very, very dark green. Almost the same colour as Gamera's shell actually, from last week. If we turn this around here, these look kind of white on camera, but this is actually just a lighter green, which is nice. It gives it a slightly different, you know, a bit of a gradient to it, which is the same here on the tail. And yeah, most of him is more or less just this one block green colour. The slightly lighter green is again used on his chest plates, and these furry bits are sort of maroon colour, a little bit of a reddish brown. More of the light green on his fingernails and his toes. And then the facial details are done in a bone sort of colour. His eyes are a sort of off-white colour. Actually, they're very similar colour to the teeth, but yeah, it's a sort of off-white bone-looking colour. And there's a bit of colouring in the mouth there. Paint job-wise, he's pretty basic. I suppose this is based on the Ultra Q version of Gomess, so which only ever appeared in black and white, so it's interesting to see a coloured version of him. It is a different colour scheme from the later coloured appearance of Gomess, so I'm guessing this is sort of an original colour scheme to this figure line. But yeah, the paint jobs, again, I'll say the same for this as I said with Gamera. It's not bad, it's nothing amazing, and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't stand out that much. It's not on the same level as the Bandai Creations King Caesar, but it's not bad. It's not bad. It's just a very standard paint job, and this is quite a standard figure overall. But yeah, the paint job's relatively standard. So this Gomess figure comes from the Ultra Monster series. Oh, this is his tag. Obviously made by Bandai. You've got Subaraya there. Had something to do with this. Apparently this originally cost 490 yen. I'll work that out in the pricing for the later section of this, but now, to the best of my knowledge, these numbers here on the card represent the number of this figure in the line. So this is the 55th figure in the line, I think, which makes more sense. I had heard that these numbers are what number the Kaiju sort of appear in the Ultra series, which is bizarre, as this was the original Kaiju in Ultraman. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure that just represents what number of figure this is. If we look on the back here, we've got Ultra Monster series written there, and the logo for Ultra Q. And you've got a picture of Gomess here from the that episode that he appeared in, and some statistics there. But obviously, I don't speak Japanese, so I can't give any more information there. And then on the inside, you've got a little bit more, some more stats, and then here you've got like helplines and just company details and that kind of thing. The tags are in pretty good condition. There's a bit of fraying around the hole there and up there and some around the edges, but yeah, the tag's in relatively decent condition, so that's a bonus. So yeah, now we're going to have a look at articulation. Well, pretty standard really, more or less like every Godzilla figure. It's got articulation here at the neck that goes 360 degrees. He's got 360 degree movement at each arm, at the shoulders. At his legs at the hip also have 360 degree articulation. And the tail. So yeah, articulation is incredibly standard, nothing remarkable there. It's all pretty good, it's not loose and it's not too stiff, it's a nice balance. So yeah, really functional articulation, but nothing particularly interesting or eye-grabbing with the articulation. But you know, in many ways that's good. He's a very standard figure. So you know, he's not anything special, but he doesn't fall short in any of these respects. Okay, so with size comparison for Gomess here, I'm not going to use the standard Final Wars, well, the Bandai Creations Final Wars that I use as my sort of standard size comparison figure. Instead, what I'm going to compare with Gomess here is a Godzilla, Showa era Godzilla suit. So, you know, you might be able to see some similarities in the characters here, as this Kaiju was obviously made recycling one of these suits. But this is the Bandai standard Soshingeki Godzilla from Godzilla 1968. I'm going to be reviewing this figure quite soon, actually. But yeah, that's a really nice comparison. The standard figure here is actually quite similar size to Final Wars Godzilla, but if you just take a look at the height here, that's really good. That's a nice size comparison. I mean, Gomess in his original appearance was a lot smaller than Godzilla would be, but for figure comparison, it's really nice to have them this kind of scale with each other. So yeah, he's going to fit in really nicely with your Bandai standards. Obviously, them being made by the same company, etc., different toy lines, but with it being the same company, they tend to make all their figures in the same sort of scale, so they fit in really nicely together. So Gomess is going to fit in really well with your Bandai standard figures, and quite well with your Bandai Creations figures. So I did some calculating and had a look at what 490 yen is in British pounds, and currently it's about £2.60, which is ridiculous. I always forget how much these figures actually are when they're released in Japan. I mean, obviously these days figures like this go for around 20 to 25 quid, but back when they were originally released, you know, they're in their native country, they're really cheap, and it's baffling when I stop and think about how cheap these things used to be. But yeah, there's Gomess figures on eBay at the moment. There's about 3 on there the last I checked, all between 15 and 20 pounds. So yep, that's a good deal. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Again, quite low on the spectrum there for vinyl figures. Really good deal, I think. And as I said with Gamera, for what it is, I think that's a perfectly good price. If you're paying any more than that, I think it would be getting a bit much. But yeah, 20 quid max, I would say I would pay for this figure personally. Now, as a slight addendum on the end of this review, I received something in the mail lately that I've been waiting for about 3 weeks, and I was going to do a whole review on it in itself, but after getting it, it's a lot smaller than I realized, so I can't really do a whole review on it. So I just wanted to put him in at the end of this so you guys could have a look. Just before I talk about it, I'll just point out that my favorite film of all time is Gappa, the Triphibian Monsters, and it's also my favorite kaiju film, obviously, and Gappa is my favorite kaiju. And I've wanted a Gappa figure for a long time, but there's a very small amount of Gappa figures online. There's maybe only 5 or 6 ones that are available, and there's a lot more than that, but they're just not online. And the ones that are online range from anywhere from about 96 quid to there's one on eBay at the moment for over 1,000 quid. And it's just not practical. I just can't afford that at the moment. But I managed to find one for 6 quid, and there was no indication of what size it would be or whatever, but I purchased it. And it arrived, and I'm happy with it, but yeah, it's just not very big, so I can't do much with it in terms of a review. But it is the Iwakura SD Gappa. Now, I've never had an SD figure before, but if we look at this guy, yeah, this is... I suppose this is what I was expecting. The only thing I would say, I was expecting this figure to be bigger, because, I don't know, just the pictures on the eBay channel for this were... I don't know, it just seemed like it was going to be bigger, but yeah, just very briefly talking about it then, the sculpting's really nice. It's in this sort of chibi style. It is a figure of the adult male Gappa, but yeah, it's in a chibi style. The detailing is really nice for something this small. Just have a look at his face there, inside of his mouth, and like his skin texture. Just a really nice little thing, and the paint job's excellent. But yeah, I've always wanted a Gappa figure, and I do intend to get one of the Hyper Hobby ones at some point when I have the money for it. You know, they're sort of really good, almost X+ quality figures, those, so I hope to get one of those eventually. But yeah, this is just a little nice thing to have, I suppose, until I get that, and it's nice to finally have something Gappa related sitting in my collection there. But yeah, he's just a nice little thing. I just wanted to show you guys, because I wouldn't be able to fit him into a review on his own, because yeah, he's just a little guy there. So yeah, overall Gomess, really good figure. He was the first Ultra Kaiju figure I had, and I was a big fan of him. I actually watched the Ultra series from the beginning, so Ultra Q was the first I watched, and he was the first Kaiju I saw, and maybe it's because he was the first, he caught my imagination more than some of the others, but yeah, he's one of my favorite Ultra Kaiju, so I'm really happy to have a figure of him, and this is a great figure. It's one of the better figures of Gomess I've seen. So yeah, for 20 quid, I highly recommend this figure. It's going to be a nice little addition to your collection, especially if you're an Ultraman fan. And the little Gappa figure there, I would recommend him. Again, I know some people collect SD figures specifically. I'm not a huge fan of the SD figures, but I do like this little Gappa purely because it's Gappa, and I'm a sucker for anything with Gappa. But he's a little small, and I suppose for what I paid, 6 quid, it's a bit much for something like that. But I suppose it's hard for me not to recommend this Gappa figure. So overall, yeah, these two guys are definitely worth buying. So this is the last review before Christmas, and over the Christmas period, I did say in a previous video that I would be trying to do the 3-day Christmas special on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day, but depending on what arrangements I have with my family, etc., to see my girlfriend and my family and things, it might have to be Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and the day after Boxing Day. There might not be one on Christmas Eve. If there's not going to be a review on Christmas Eve, I'll still put up a little message. But yeah, so just be aware that it could be Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and the day after instead of the aforementioned schedule. But yeah, thanks guys for sticking with it, and I'll see you guys over Christmas, and then we'll hit back into the normal review schedule on the weekend after Christmas. So thanks guys, and I'll see you guys next time.